Thanks for joining today's talk. I'm Bert from Google Brain and NVIDIA. My talk is about training sensorimotor agents in Cellular Automata. It's a bit different from the usual machine learning or AI research, and I think it's a bit interesting. A little bit about myself. I got a bachelor in computer science in CUHK from Hong Kong, and I got a master in cognitive science from Sweden. Now I'm working at Google Brain Tokyo as a research software engineer, and I also collaborate with NVIDIA in France. First, I want to talk about what is Lenia and what's mean to artificial life and artificial intelligence. You may have heard about the name artificial life, or in short, ALife. This is a field of research or study that try to simulate life forms or in biology to study life as we know it. That means we try to study biology by simulating them inside computers or in robots. We also try to create new kinds of life forms to study life as it might be, in terms of like synthetic life or other computer simulations. In ALife, we have three main categories of studies. The first one is soft ALife, or we use software to study life. For example, these 3D simulations of particles, like we call this swarm chemistry, or the famous, a little bit famous virtual creatures that can be evolved from simple to more complex structures. The second kind is hard ALife, or we use hardware or machines to recreate different kind of life forms, like these robots from Boston Dynamics, and also very interesting strand-based machines from Theo Jansen. The third type is wet ALife. That is just synthetic biology. For example, these artificial cells, and also the recent xenobots that we call them living robots. So what's the relationship between AI and ALife? On the one hand, because AI, we have studied very efficient and fast algorithms like deep learning or just plain old machine learning. We can apply these methodologies to study ALife because we use computer simulations or robotics in ALife, that we can use those algorithms. And we can also employ the advanced cognitive abilities from AI, like pattern recognition and computer vision, and also some kind of reinforcement learning control, so that we can apply it to ALife. And in turn, the research in ALife provides some new perspectives or alternative algorithms, like evolutionary strategies, so we can provide some ideas to AI research. And actually, some ideas like neural networks actually came from ALife. We also try to provide some more robust systems studies, like self-organization, self-repairing, or self-replication from the study of ALife, and try to apply them into AI and see if we can achieve some kind of self-organizing or self-repairing robots, something like that. There is a essay from Lana Silapayan in the online magazine called The Gradient. It talks about, it gives an introduction to ALife for people who like artificial intelligence. It's a neat summary or introduction that you can read about. You can go to this link, bit.ly/ALife for AI.
Quick question.
Hmm.
How does methods like domain randomization or just kind of when I think about simulation in terms of AI, I often think about, okay, you want to train in a simulation because it's faster and you know, you can just give different kinds of data that you can't get necessarily in the real world. How does that kind of fit into how you think about the relationship between artificial life and AI?
Yeah, there's some common methodologies in AI and ALife. Like we like to do simulations in ALife like these virtual creatures, and actually they provide some kind of virtual environment that you can collect data. Like I know there's many research in AI that is using like some virtual humanoids or virtual creatures inside those environments to test if they can walk in bipedal fashion or something like that. It's actually quite similar to what we are doing in ALife. So yeah, there are common things that we can common methodologies we can deploy. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So within those many types of study in ALife, there's a particular type called cellular automata. The most famous one is called Conway's game of life. You may hear about it. They are actually like some distributed complex systems that have some kind of local update rules. And they usually produce many kinds of emergent patterns. Like this one. This is so-called glider guns that emit gliders periodically from this kind of machinery. In cellular automata, like in Conway's game of life, we have like binary states, like 0 and 1s in a grid of many cells, and we usually take the nearest neighborhood, like the X cell around each cell, and in the calculation we calculate the neighbor sum of the immediate neighborhood, and we use some kind of if then else rules to calculate the next step, the next state of the cells. And we usually use replacement. That means in the next time step, the values will be replaced by another value. But within the cellular automata, there's another like very different kind of system called continuous cellular automata or continuous CAs. We try to make the system to become continuous in terms of space-time and states. That some of them may produce a very rich kind of lifelike, smooth and robust patterns. We do these kind of changes, like we use real numbers instead of like discrete numbers. Instead of like nearest neighbors, we use a very large circular neighborhood. Instead of just label sum and if then else, we used other kinds of calculation like convolution with kernels and smooth mapping functions. Instead of replacement, we use incremental updates. So using these kind of changes, we achieve a continuous space-time and states. And we, instead of discrete guidance, we can discover this kind of very strange or interesting smooth guidance.
Can you quickly expand on the incremental update and why it's different from complete replacement?
Okay,
So
so
you're saying that if you're just summing something, you could like force it to change it to any value.
Yeah, we can still use replacement. Like if we calculate the next value is 0.7, we can just replace this. But in experiments, we find that this update is not particularly interesting. And when we try to change it to incremental updates, like if the value we get is 0.7, then if we add like 0.07 into the original value and keep updating, just add and subtract a little value, then it becomes, it can generate more interesting or more diverse patterns. So it's like some kind of experimental study where we find this rule is it produces better results. And it actually implements continuous time because it's like some kind of Euler method for the for doing the mathematics.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. So the update rule is just repeating this stuff. We initialize a grid or a distribution of cells, and we apply convolution with a kernel. The kernel can be quite complex, but usually they're circular. And we apply this grid, this matrix into a growth function, this smooth function, and we add a small portion back to the world and clip the values back to 0 and 1. And we use this simple algorithm, we can produce many different kind of patterns. And actually, this framework is quite similar to neural networks. You can say this some kind of convolutionary recurrent neural network. If you haven't seen this kind of video, you can take a look at this video, and these are those very interesting patterns that are produced in Lenia.
Sorry, I had a quick question for the previous slide. Yeah, I just have two questions actually. So what's the what does it mean to add a small portion to the world, and for the gradient clip? It's not gradient, but like for the clipping, like have you played around with the value, and did something crazy happen if you increase the clipping value, and did like anything like not interesting happen when the value was smaller? So like what was your experience with it?
Yeah, we do a lots of experiments like changing or tricking this each of these steps. So with like adding a small portion, we can adjust how small is the portion. If the portion is too large, then it will just create some patterns that go out, and there's no interesting patterns in that kind of rules. But if we add very small portion, like just like a million, one millionth of the value back to the grid, the patterns will tend to be smoother and more stable. So this is also the result of experiments. And if we don't clip the values back to 0 and 1, also it will just go up to infinity. So it's also like some experimental idea of which kind of system give interesting patterns. And so here you can see some variance, like we can just apply multiple dimensions, multiple channels of the world, or we can use some soft clip so that they can produce other kinds of interesting patterns.
Gotcha, thank you.
So I will give some links to these videos that showcase different types of patterns. You can see they are just keep self-replicating, or they are like do some, these are 3D or 4D patterns. So here's a collab notebook that goes from step by step from Conway schema of life to Lenia. If you wish to implement it, you can go to this link to actually see what's happening in the algorithm. Sorry, some cleaning in my office. There are many kinds of ongoing research in Lenia, like with doing some taxonomy or quantitative analysis of those patterns. We also do some pure mathematical proofs. On the ALife or AI side, we try to do some automatic discovery of those patterns, because we don't want to just use manual discovery. It's quite troublesome to do so. Some of the patterns also go like some swarming. They form communities or colonies. So we try to study if some of those patterns can form some kind of swarm connection. And of course, we want to do some kind of open-ended evolution, try to see if those patterns can generate like infinite kinds of patterns. We can also try to implement them in other many types of programming languages like JAX, Python in PyTorch, TensorFlow, or in Web, or in Houdini.
I think something I don't have a great sense of in general for this work is like what are the kinds of questions that you're really trying to answer, or what are you hoping to learn through the taxonomy through the taxonomy process, or just in general by kind of studying this stuff.
Yeah. At the very beginning, like 5 years ago, I just want to categorize everything. Like, I see this kind of interesting pattern, but what can we do to them? I have no idea at that moment. So I just try to categorize, or like do some very basic study of their values, or are they really smooth, or are they just go this direction, or how fast will we go if we change the parameters? So, but the focus is often or usually those localized patterns, because they looks like, or they behave like some kind of cells or some kind of machine. Can we treat them as robots or living machines that we can study or utilize them in other kinds of study? So yeah, this is the main focus of the research topics of those are patterns, or can we call them creatures or life forms? Because they look like or behave like one. Can we just call them life? There's some other opinions, or they are just mathematics. They are just values. We can't say, or we can say they are creatures. But they do reproduce, or they can evolve, they can move, they can shapeshift. So it's kind of depends on your viewpoint. And another question is, can we treat them as agents, as in AI or ALife study? Because it seems like they can perceive the world around them, they can act upon the environment, and it seems they can have some certain kind of goals, like they try to survive through the ever-changing environment, or they can even interact with each other. So in the next session, let's talk about agents. What's meant by agency, and can we treat those patterns as agents? When we talk about agents, we often we talk about in AI, we usually talk about virtual creatures or virtual robots, or even in terms of NLP, we can talk about chatbots, that there are some kind of intelligence inside those beings, and we can sometimes even communicate with them. And in biology, we talk about agents like birds, cells, or even a colony of cells, or colony of ants, that they somehow have some intelligent behaviors come out from these individual agents. And of course, humans are agents. We can talk about the agency of a nation, or in politics, or in economy.
Sorry. How is the bird singing like considered like agents, not like the act behind the individual agent? Like, does that? Yeah.
Mm. The term agents is so general that you can call a bird as agent if we study the interaction between birds, or between a bird and a human. Then it's an agent that is somehow doing its own stuff, and it can communicate with other agents.
I see.
Yeah. So in this scenario, we can call it an agent.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So in Russell and Novick, in this book, AI and Modern Approach, they try to define agent as something that try to perceive its environment through the senses, and also act upon the environment through its effectors. So we can say an agent is having a self that can perceive and act in a certain kinds of goals in mind inside an environment. I try to categorize agents into 3 types. One is learnable agents that we usually deal with in AI. They have fixed morphology, but their behavior can be learned using reinforcement learning or other kinds of deep learning. And usually they are reward-driven or curiosity-driven, like these robots or some virtual RL agents. The second kind is more interesting to me, at least, because those agents, their morphology can be evolved, like the classical evolved virtual creatures by Sims. Also, like some evolvable RA agents or robots. You can see this. The legs can be evolved to shorter or longer, either in real life robots or inside those virtual environments. The third kind is much more strange, but actually you can see this everywhere in the nature. I call them emergent agents. For emergence, I mean the whole is not just more than, but actually different from the sum of the parts. And they are usually complex systems that are made from homogeneous components. Examples are biological entities like cells, animals, trees, and even ant colonies, human societies, countries. They form by not predefined agents or predefined entity. They form by like grouping grouping cells or grouping humans, and they form a new entity. Of course, cellular automata and other examples like living robots, xenobots, or robot swarms. I also want to talk about properties of agents. We usually talk about some connection or intelligence, beliefs, or certain kind of goals that are about humans or intelligent animals. But in some other research ideas, that we can also talk about goals or beliefs in simpler agents like cells or simple organisms, microorganisms, or even in ant colonies. Can we talk about these topics like goals or belief or survival in those entities? Somehow the answer can be yes, because if we treat those entities as a gradient, having some kinds of gradients of cognitive levels from very primitive to very advanced levels, then we can study the relationship between those kinds of levels and why connection arose from human or from biology. And also about connection, we usually only talk about the mind or eternal representations in AI, especially in NLP. We talk about when we try to train those language models, we always talk about the mind of human. But in embodied cognition, we talk about the body. The connection is always about the mind and also the body situated inside an environment. So in this school of thinking, there's no longer a Cartesian body-mind dualism. We treat them as a whole, and we talk about the influence from body to mind and from mind to body. So in this study, or in Lenia, we talk about embodied cognition because the patterns are always have a body inside an environment. Even we talk about embodiments, we can also have two schools of thinking. The one thinking is mechanistic view. We use this view in robotics in AI because in robotics we always assumes, or we often assumes a fixed body, a body made of metallic parts, or in reinforcement learning, the body parts are almost like always fixed or come from some kind of components. Also, the sensors and the actuators are like fixed. We have fixed eyes, fixed robotic arms to do something. and there's a clear separation between the agent and the environment. We are always a separate self from any other things. The good thing about this view is we can talk about higher level of cognitive powers, and we can study the language ability, the perception, or the computer vision side of this mind. The another view is very different from the mechanistic view, is the inactivistic view. In this view, an agent or embodiment is not assumed a priori. Instead, agents emerge from the environment. Like in biology, when a living thing come into being, it's actually using those chemical or those proteins from its environment, and it somehow ensemble an agent or being out from its environment. And also the environment is, we call it precarious conditions. That means it's always changing, always challenging that animal. And you can see in this video, you can see there's a microorganism, but in the next second it dies. So in this precarious condition, it always tries to maintain its selfness, its individuality, and try to also renew its chemical constituents. And also for the human being, there's a saying that a human body renew itself every 7 years, and there's some truth inside. So a human being is also like an inactivist agent and not a fixed agent. So I talked about a lot about what means by agents. So in Lenia, in this next research about Lenia, I actually talk about emergent agents. They have some kind of basal, embodied, and inactivist connection. So what I mean is actually what we are dealing with is actually quite different from the usual mechanistic agents that we always talk about in AI studies. So let's train those linear agents. This recent study from me and other folks in India, we have wrote a article, a blog post, and we also have a full YouTube video and an interactive demo. You can go to this link to have a look, to play around with the demo and see the video. Excuse me. So in this study, we try to train those agents that have some kind of sensorimotor capability. That means they can sense the environment and also act upon the environment. This study, we have 4 ingredients. The first is a so-called differentiable complex system. The second one is we try to construct a virtual environment inside this system. The third and the fourth ingredients are algorithms to train those agents, an inner loop and an outer loop. So the first ingredient is so-called differentiable complex system. And complex system is like when you have many components that interact with each other locally, like a human society or a bunch of cells or a bunch of interacting virtual agents. then we call that complex system. Some kind of complex system, some of them are discrete, like Conway scheme of life, they're discrete. So it's not really differentiable. We cannot apply machine learning methods in Conway scheme of life, for example. It's very hard to do so. But if we in continuous CAs like Lenia, it's actually differentiable because all the parameters are actually like real values. We can do gradient descent on them to achieve certain kind of results that we want. So there's a methodology called neural cellular automata from Motvinchev from Google. It's a new methodology to deal with this kind of differentiable complex system. But even in Lenia, we try to make it more differentiable by making discrete parameters into continuous ones. The second one, the second ingredient is we try to build an environment inside Lenia, so that it's not just creatures going around. In this study, we try to introduce obstacles or walls in the system. The walls are actually in a fixed CA channel, because in this cellular automata, we can have different channels in the world. In the fixed channel, we have environment, and if in learnable, mutable channels, we have those linear creatures that they can actually learn to bypass or survive those obstacles. The third ingredient is an inner loop that actually implements gradient descent. We use neural CA to calculate the L2 loss of the creature from a circular target. So if the creature is inside this target at the end, then it will have a small loss, so it's successful. Is that a question?
So why, like, not why, but did you try things different from L2 or just L2 until now?
Oh, yeah. So this is like the first time we use this kind of loss function to try to actually train a pattern. So L2 loss is like the simplest thing we can try on. Of course, if you can think of other kind of loss function, then you can tell me, and we can try this too.
Got it.
Yeah. So it seems like L2 loss is the most straightforward thing in terms of in computer vision. So we can just calculate the amount of cells, amount of values that match the target area, then it's good. Actually, you can also use other kinds of loss function, like the speed or the location, the center of mass of the pattern. But it's just one or two numerical values. So the backpropagation is not as rich as a L2 loss.
Can you remind me again what the parameters are here that you're optimizing, and how this works again, I guess?
Okay. So in this system, we have let's go back. So like about the convolution, because we do convolution with a circular kernel, and for the kernel we can change the shape of the kernel. Like we use a Gaussian kernel, the the position of the kernel, like the position of the peak, the width of the peak, and the height of the peak. And we can also like have different rings of the kernel. If we have like 3 circular rings, then we can have 3 different sets of parameters, like line parameters. And also for the growth function, the smooth growth function, if you use Gaussian function, we can also have the peak, the position, the width, and the height. And we can also have multiple growth functions. So in a multiple kernel version of Lenia, we can have like 100 of parameters that we can tweak. So for different values of those parameters, we can generate different kinds of patterns. So in these videos, different patterns are actually comes from different parameters, or different combinations of parameters.
And
so
these,
this,
this is defining how the state changes over time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right.
So the system keep in the simulation. The simulation keep going, and the pattern keep evolving, and the parameters is influencing how the pattern behave or how the pattern structure through time.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So the study is try to find those parameters that give the patterns that we want, the behaviors that we want.
Yeah, if you allow some metaphors, it's like you're trying to find the correct, laws of physics and gravity and all that, so you could get life on your universe.
Yeah, yeah. And also you can think about get the right set of genes so that we get the living thing that we want. It's some kind of genetic engineering, if you think about it, using machine learning. So that is the interloop. We use machine learning to try to get the right set of parameters so that the patterns actually go from the starting position to the ending position and not going elsewhere or not just die. Because actually the patterns in Lenia is actually very fragile. If you change a parameter a bit, then it will just disappear easily. But for some parameters, those patterns can be very robust. They are very hard to die out. So we are trying to find those very specific values of parameters that give us those patterns that can achieve the target and also not die out easily. And in the outer loop, we also have some kind of training curriculum, because if we set the target too far away from the beginning, then the target will be very hard to go to this target, and the feedback, the L2 loss is very hard to achieve, because it will just go elsewhere, and we have zero sum for the L2 loss. So it's some kind of vanishing gradient problem. Using the curriculum, we use a target that is farther and farther away, so that in stage 1, we have a very near target. So it's like a baby step. We encourage the pattern to have some very if you can go a very short distance, then you are successful, and we encourage this kind of small steps, and we encourage farther and farther distance of targets. So after stage 1, they should have the patterns then can go for a long distance. And at stage 2, we try to introduce obstacles, so that if a creature and we try to traverse the space, and if we bump into some kind of obstacle, and if it die out, then it will just is not encouraged if a high loss. And if we somehow manage to pass through the obstacle, then it's successful. We use one type of algorithm called inject that it is applied to many other models research in reinforcement learning, so that we also apply to Lenia to try to randomize or to provide it these steps so that at the end it can evade those obstacles and reach a very far away target. The result is like this. So it's very good. Those patterns don't actually exist. They don't die out. Is the first good result. The second result is when it bumps into obstacles. In the left is a failure case. It just disappears. And the right hand side, you see a successful trained pattern that it can just survive the heads-on collisions.
And so you're placing the targets in random spots, but they don't have perception, do they? So you're training it to just move anywhere is the idea.
Yeah, because in the curriculum we try to like random targets. If the pattern can reach one of those targets, then it's successful, and we will save that success case and then train it further to a random nearby target.
Okay.
And talk about sense is a very good question, because it's somehow the patterns in Lenia, it somehow can sense its surroundings. So for now, we still don't know why those patterns can do this, but we guess that because in the algorithm we have a convolutional kernel, right? The convolution is actually we are guessing that it gives it some kind of sensory of its circular surroundings. So it gives some kind of numerical input to this pattern, and this pattern is actually acts as some kind of computation, as in the morphology, not in the parameters, not in the system, but inside the pattern. So the pattern itself is using this convolution to get inputs from its surrounding, do some morphological calculation, and move another direction as an action. So this is our guess. We don't have some mathematical proof, but I hope we can prove this kind of foundational concept. The why they can do this. And some generalization of this study is that they can survive obstacles that have unseen shapes and sizes, even a wall-shaped obstacle. And you just now see that it's actually escaping from dead ends. It's actually quite surprising to us, because we don't actually train them to to escape from dead ends or even navigate through a maze. Yeah, some question? No,
No, sorry, I was just saying that's very impressive. The generalization to new shapes.
Yeah, we are very surprised actually. So that's why we think it actually have some more. We can do more experiments and more research in this direction. And to be fair, when the patterns try to navigate the maze, it's not very. We think it's not very intellectual way of navigating, because the pattern for now it doesn't have some kind of memory. It doesn't remember. Oh, I have been to this dead end, so next time we go this way. No, it just go randomly. But at least it can just go through the maze without dying, and so actually it have a chance to escape the maze. And also because of self-organization inside these complex systems, we actually get this robustness or generalization for free. We try this moving targets, so it's like dodging bullets, and actually they are successful in dodging bullets. And also they can we introduce some randomness in the updates. It's like some dropout in neural network, and actually they survive without further training. And also those patterns are actually scale-free. For scale-free, it means we try to make everything smaller, the kernels smaller, the patterns smaller, but with the same rules. Those patterns can still survive with this smaller rule or bigger rule, with the same size of obstacles. And we also try to let multiple agents to interact. And to our surprise, that we didn't train them for this kind of interaction, and somehow they also survive in agent collisions, because in general the usual case is if two patterns collide, they will just explode. That is the usual case. But after that training, they didn't explode. They like very politely passing by each others. And so it's also quite surprising that one training generalized to another behavior that we want. We also get reproduction. That means they will when two of them bump into each other, sometimes they will get three creatures. So these are the results of this research, and we try in the future we will try to introduce more environmental elements to the system, and also we may use other ways to train the system and see if we can get other more interesting results. We are thinking about how to introduce energy into the system. That means like this, the green background is energy, and somehow those red patterns, they have to seek energy from the background, or else they will die. If there's not enough energy, like if they bump into the black area, they will die out. But again, it's without training. We didn't train those patterns, and somehow they can still like seed out the energy-rich areas of this matrix. So we can see this generalization power of the system.
Wait, sorry, can you explain that a little bit more? Like how you're encoding the energy and then yeah.
Yeah, sure. For the obstacles is actually because there's no matter or no electric magnetism inside this system, right? So for bumping into an obstacle, that means the blue obstacle is actually like, you can say is some kind of black hole. If a pattern bump into a blue area, we're actually setting the values to 0. That means if it bump into some blue area, the pattern will lose a part of itself, or will lose the values of certain parts. So it's more like bumping into a black hole than into an obstacle, so to speak. But the thing is, the pattern somehow it can sense it lost a part of it, and it tried to self-maintain or self-recover from this loss of mass. So it can turn away, or it can just self-repair to back to the pattern. So that's how it interacts with the obstacles. And for energy, our equation is like if the pattern is going on a green area, then it's just normal. But if it's going through a black area, the black area will have a negative influence to the values of the pattern. Like like losing energy. It is just a multiplication of a smaller and smaller value. And also, the pattern is consuming the energy. That means if a pattern go through a green area, then it will also deplete or will lower the values, the green values. So this is how we implement obstacles and energy. Is a bit different from what we think about the physical world or biology, real biology. But yeah, that's how we work on this kind of virtual environment and try to replicate what's happening in the real world. So in the next study, we may try to introduce memory, and the memory, that means we may give more channels to the system so that it may start to remember some memory or do more calculation inside those parallel worlds or the parallel variables. We may try to introduce competition or symbiosis or even co-evolution with for different species of those creatures. And we may try to introduce interactions with between human and those creatures. Like if we move a mouse around to give it food, then it may be attracted by the mouse. And we'll see if we can do this in the future. The takeaway of this study, or the whole Lenia research, is that we proved that we can train self-organizing robust agents inside these systems using machine learning. So it's some kind of crossover between AI and ALife. the second thing is if we introduce richer and richer environmental constraints inside this system, we will see more and more advanced behaviors of those agents. This is similar to what we observe in biology, because if the environment is just non-changing for millions of years, then we will see the creatures just not evolving. But if there's much challenge, like there are extinction events, there are much competition, or the food is scarce, then we can see a speed up of evolution of those organisms. And in fact, some argue that why human evolved to become that intelligent is because in the past millions of years, there's so much environmental challenges to the human species, ancient human species. The third takeaway is the self-organization properties of these systems actually let the agents so-called they take care themselves. So we don't have to micromanage those creatures, and actually it's easier to train those agents more than other systems in reinforcement learning or NLP or other agents in AI. We use mixed methodologies like gradient descent, curriculum learning, or even evolutionary algorithms, so that it's easier to escape from local optima, because we usually get similar agents or similar creatures from different trainings. So we introduce randomness, we do mutation to it so it can produce different kind of creatures that are more interesting. So we hope that this research will lead to more robust intelligent systems. And we can also ask what this all mean to NLP research, because I heard that there's some study that try to treat chatbots or language models or even large language models as agents, which makes sense to me. And how can we use these ideas like robust agents or self-organizing or self-repairing inactivist connection, these kind of ideas, apply them to NLP research? I hope to see this kind of crossover. So these are the resources. I will copy and paste into the chat. And thank you for listening to this talk.
Thank you for the talk. It was really interesting. I do have, I guess, a more personal question. How did you begin working on artificial life?
Okay, so that's the other way around. I am very interested in programming, coding. So in my besides my working hours, I try to code like Conway's Game of Life, and after that, I try to change its rules, like because in Python or in C++, it's just easy to just change integer to a real value number. So I just try to change this, and it have some kind of strange result. The patterns somehow change to very different behaviors and very different structures. So I keep changing the rules, and then I arrive to something that is similar to Lenia. And so I give this a name, and then I read about other books about artificial life, artificial intelligence. Also, so it seems like there are many other things that is similar to what I was doing. So it's just straightforward to introduce this system to other people inside those research circles. And it's actually useful in AI and ALife somehow.
Cool. And why Lenia? Why that name?
Oh,
Lenia.
so the patterns and the system is kind of smooth, right? The functions are smooth, the patterns, the creatures are smooth, not like those digital creatures in Conway scheme of life. So I searched some online dictionary, and Lenius is the Latin of smooth creatures. So I try to name those creatures like Lenia something. Those like Homo sapiens. I give like Lenia. I forgot the name. Lenia opium. Yeah. So the name stuck. Like I call them all of them Lenia.
What is like if this line of research was as successful as you could possibly imagine, like what would the result be? Like what would we learn, or what would happen? And yeah.
Because what I see is in most research in machine learning or AI, the systems they're very intelligent, they are very efficient, but somehow they are fragile. That means for robots, if you try to like you remove a hand, you try to um, destroy a part of it, then you just um, not working. Of course, I see some studies that it can adapt by using different kind of strategy, or it can change its behavior to adapt to this change in morphology. Those are very interesting research. But what I see is, how about just make those morphology that can self-repair? But for now, of course, those virtual creatures, those linear creatures, is very far from actual being, an actual machine that can self-repair. But I think it's the direction that's very lifelike. We can actually learn from biology. That you see a bird or an insect that not only it can have some kind of intelligent behavior, its body is actually from the million or billions of evolution, is also robust, and it can reproduce, it can self-repair. But I can see that it's also some kind of scary idea that if we can achieve this kind of self-repairing robots, then there's some kind of self-replicating robots. There's some kind of concern that we are producing some kind of monster, so to speak. So I think, yeah, it's already some kind of ethical questions out of this kind of ALife research, as even is just the beginnings. Yeah, but it's good to see this kind of ethical questions already happening in the research.
I had one question. Was there like out of like all the mathematical modeling techniques you've used, was there like a single moment that changed like the behavior of the whole thing? Like maybe like something very simple, like kind of changed something.
What do you mean by single moment?
Well, like single. No, I guess like I might be like imagining things, but like was there like one thing that you added or changed and just like changed the behavior in a way that you had not imagined, or
Oh,
I
okay,
don't know.
okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, because when you talk about moments, I think about the like a mathematical formula that calculates a second moment,
Oh, I
third
see.
moment, yeah, something like that.
Sorry.
So yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean
know.
non-mathematical moments.
Yeah,
The time-wise moment for us. Yeah.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. We are still trying to figure out what's happening. The relationship between those parameters and what what are the behaviors or the structure of those agents. This is the why or how of this research. So one guess is that some of those kernels they act like sensors, and some of the other kernels they are like effectors or actuators. That's because if we change one of those kernels, they kind of sense further further things in the environment. And if we change other kernels, they somehow they act differently. And we also like in this creature, we copy this kernel into another creature, and it's some kind of genetic engineering. And yeah, it as like how we suppose that means it will sense or act as the another creature. So this is only our guess, and we wish to do more qualitative or quantitative research to prove this thing, and also to know what's happening in those patterns.
I see. That's really cool. That's mind-blowing to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I know some other mathematicians that try to do some pure math proving inside the system, and I don't understand those very deep formulas. But yeah, some people are trying to do these rigorous proofs.
I see. Thank you. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed the talk. It just, yeah, I think it's really cool. And yeah, I was mind blown the whole time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I really want to see if there's some kind of idea exchange between different areas, like NLP and ALife is quite far away from my viewpoint. But there's some overlap between them, like agency that we can see. We can think about what can we do with both sides. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for coming to the talk. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
talk.
Thank you.